Hey gorgeous. So you know from the title, this is something I never really brought up, but I had my Nexplanon reinserted, so not the first time, this is the second time experience, which is something I had trouble finding information about. I did find a video of like how doctors do it, which actually freaked me out a little bit more. So if you don't want to actually see the procedure, I suppose this is the video for you. Although I will probably include, like, I did take some pictures of over the process of healing that I might share later on, so if you don't like blood, I would not recommend this. Anyway, so about my experience with birth control to start off. So I started off with the pill. I was pretty young. When I was like 11 or 12, I can't remember, I was diagnosed with PCOS. And one thing they do with PCOS is even though I wasn't like sexually active, they just kind of put you on birth control to regulate your periods because your periods are not regular when you have PCOS. And that's how I found out I had it, because sometimes they were pretty close together and sometimes I didn't have it for like 3 months. So it was TMI, but there you go. That's what PCOS was like for me. And a few other things, but I'm not going to go into that. That's not the diatribe that today is. So basically I was on birth control for a long time. And birth control, you take the pill every day, you have your week of pills off, which I always took, so otherwise I forgot which day to... And it's a pain in the butt. It's not the worst thing in the world, as long as you remember in the morning. When I was younger, I sucked at that. And then when I got older, I was fine during high school, and then in college I got more scatterbrained again. So it was a little more rough for me, and I wanted something a little more convenient. So from birth control, I switched to the patch. If you're unfamiliar with the patch, I haven't heard about it. I feel like I was the only person I knew who ever heard of or used the patch, so I don't know how common this is, because it's not common in my circle at all. But it was a lot more convenient. Basically, you have a little patch. It's kind of like like a nicotine patch, like the thing that they put on your arm. And the patch you could put on arm, you could put on like your lower hip, front hip. There are a few positions you could put it in. They didn't want you to do the same one every week, because it could irritate your skin. And you put on one patch a week, you put it on at the beginning of the week, and then at the end of the week, you take that one off, and then you pick a different spot, and you put the new patch on, and you have 3 patches in a month, so 1 week you just don't wear a patch, and that's when you generally have your period. And that's how the patch worked. I really did like the patch. It was pretty effective for period-wise, I guess. I wasn't super sexually active at that time either, so I don't know about that, but I think it was pretty high up there on, like, protection against pregnancy, if that's what you're looking for. And it was pretty good, but I know I still had it when I started dating my now husband. And I feel like for a year it was great. And then suddenly it was getting snagged on, like if I put it on my back hip, it was getting snagged on my leggings. So I'd pull my leggings down and it would just like tear off. And then it was summer, so I didn't want to put it on my arms because it's super obvious. So I would try to keep it down, but then yeah, like it would start coming off my leggings. And with the patch, you can reapply it. You can reapply the patch as long as it sticks. But if it's not sticking, it gets a little like, ooh, it's not effective if it's not sticking properly, so then sometimes you have to use the next one, but you only have 3 per month. So I think you'd get a few at a time. Like I don't think you'd only get 3. I think you'd get like a stash of like 3 months worth, at least when I was getting it. So I did have extras on hand, but then you kind of have to like wait for the next prescription, especially if like 2 come off in that 3-month span. Then you're just like, oh no, what am I gonna, like, can I get the other one early? Like, can I call ahead? That kind of stuff. So I eventually decided to switch off of the patch. Now, the decision for Nexplanon was, I don't know why, it came pretty easy to me. I really did not want an IUD. So I heard a lot of horror stories about IUDs and like them falling out and them getting like stuck or whatever, and I'm not here to like fearmonger. Like, that's probably definitely a very small percentage of people have that issue. So it just wasn't, it worried me, because I don't know, I don't like anything to do with like periods or anything, so I just didn't want anything up there. And so having Nexplanon, which is like a little matchstick that goes in your arm, like I was like, I'll do that. Like that sounds less worrisome, even though there are also horror stories about like them inserting it too deep and then it travels in your body and stuff. So there are horror stories with everything, just like all the stuff. So I'm not here to say don't get an IUD, I'm just saying I don't have experience with that one, so I have no idea how well that would go for me personally. I just did Nexplanon. So Nexplanon to get Nexplanon is the standard, you get a physical and then you get a consultation, and sometimes you can just ask for the consultation during your physical so you don't have to make the second appointment. And then the last appointment is the doctor inserting it. And basically it comes in like this little plunger thing, and it has a, I don't know what, like a pokey, like a shank, a needle, I don't know what it's called. But basically they put it against your skin, and they poke in. Obviously you're numbed up. I didn't feel any of this. This is my first experience. So you're numbed up, they put the little needle in, and like put it where they think it should be placed, and they make sure it's under your skin, so you will feel it. You should be able to feel it. And they basically press the plunger, it's in. For me, they used a little like sticky tape suture things. They just put that over it, like in a big old circle, like a little star on my arm, and then they used a compression wrap over it. And afterwards, cannot recommend what I did. So basically they ask, hey, can you feel it? Make sure you can feel it in your arm. And I was pretty numbed up, and my arm was pretty swollen, so I couldn't feel anything. And so I was sitting there just kind of like laughing about it. I don't know why. I think I was just so anxious that I was just like, oh, this isn't a big deal, ha ha ha. I also was not pressing hard enough. So I was worried about hurting it later. I will say, don't worry about that. Push against your arm, it's gonna hurt later regardless. So just make sure you're like, can feel it, because I don't recommend. I lied and I said I could feel it when I did not feel it. And that's not a good thing to do, don't do that. So I ended up leaving, and later that day I tried again once the swelling had gone down a bit, and I felt it, and I was like, okay, it's there. But that just gave me, I was fine in the doctor's office, and as soon as I left, I was a ball of anxiety, like, oh no, I didn't feel it. So yeah, don't recommend. Just be honest with your doctor, okay? Because sometimes it can get stuck inside the plunger. I feel like that's a thing that could happen, or like it doesn't actually get inserted, so you want to make sure you have it in there. That was my first experience with Nexplanon, and now this is on to the second experience, which is a little bit different. So you still have to do the physical and have a consult, which I did in the same appointment. My primary doctor is also, she can do the injections. I was able to set up an appointment. It was a couple weeks after the 3 years had gone up, because Nexplanon is effective for 3 years. Some places say 3 to 5 years. It really varies. I'm a stickler about expiration dates when it comes to like food and everything, so I tried to get as close to 3 years as possible. I go in for my appointment. Jake actually came with me because I was a huge weenie about it, because I actually saw a video of people doing it and I didn't like it. I usually look away when doctors put anything in my arm because it skeeves me out. It's slightly different because in the original appointment, they just poke the thing in your arm and they insert it, and that's all they have to do. This one, they know where they find, so I don't know if you probably can't see. I have a little scar on my arm, and they found the scar where I'd originally had Nexplanon put in. And they basically had to, because you can't just put a new one in, you have one in there. So they have to cut you open, and they sort of gently, like, they grab a forceps, grab the end, and they sort of, like, scrape, like, the insides away, like, so you can, like, gently pull it out. I talked to Jake the whole time, because I didn't want to see it, but Jake said, like, yeah, it's actually kind of cool. She was kind of just, like, scraping down the edges and pulling it out and scraping down the edges, and I was like, ew. Thanks. So it didn't take very long, and she got it out. And then they used, since she had already had the incision in my arm, she put the injector into the incision. So when you get Nexplanon the second time, be aware that the Nexplanon will not be in exactly the same place it was before. Like, since they're using that hole, it goes up a little higher, so it's a little closer to my armpit than it was before. That scared me when I first noticed that, but that's totally normal. It will be a little closer because they're using that hole and not making the hole themselves. I honestly don't know how it will work in the future if I get it again. I'm not sure if I will. I might just end up being done with birth control at some point. But yeah, I don't know how many times you can get it reinserted. I'm sure you can just keep going. It'll probably just stay in the same spot a little closer to the armpit. It just won't be the lower down version of the first time. And yeah, so they inject it in basically just like the first time. You just have the incision there first. So they inject it in, and she didn't do stitches. I think she only put like 2 things on it, and then the compression wrap. And so just leave the compression wrap on for 24 hours, and then leave the bandages on until they fall off, basically. And she said if you're worried about it, you can put a Band-Aid over those. She said they would be fine regardless. I put a Band-Aid over it during the process because I didn't like seeing it. And it took, I can't remember how many weeks to heal. I think it was a few weeks. I have some pictures here and I can't remember. And now it is totally healed. It's been 2 months. You can see the scar on my arm, and you can like feel the matchstick in my arm. I don't know, I'm sure you can't see it on, oh, you can kind of see like a little of the divot right here. That's where it is. So there, right in the middle, that's where the scar is. So it is just a straight line, and it healed up pretty good, and it kind of just looks like, from a distance, it looks a little bit like a mole or something. Like, it doesn't really look like anything ridiculous, and you don't really notice it. And I still, usually like once a week, I just check to make sure it's still in position, still there, it's totally fine. A lot of times it's a set it and forget it thing, but I have a little bit of anxiety, so every so often I just remember it's there, and I'm like, okay, let's make sure that's not in my bloodstream. But if you don't like feeling something in your arm, don't get Nexplanon, or just ignore it completely. But I think the doctor said you should check every so often just to, I don't know, minimize the risk. Although it's so close to the exterior of your skin that it shouldn't move. It's more like if it gets further in and like it gets into like, I don't know, like a blood vessel or something. It seems like it's too big to get through anything, but I guess it's a side effect that can happen. When I had it, it hurt for a couple days. Like, I just kind of would feel like, it felt like I felt the sting of like when she did the scalpel. Because she numbed me the second time, but I still you can feel the pressure of it, like when you get cut open, which is gross. Hate that feeling. But it was relatively painless. I didn't have any issues with it. It is surgery, so if you're concerned about that, I don't blame you. To me it was basically like I've had a lot of teeth work done. So I've had a couple root canals, I've had so many cavities that I've had filled. So it's basically like that, where they just numb you up and they do it, and then you just go. It's honestly, this is unrelated, but I also went to a dermatologist and I got a mole removed because they said it looked a little funny. And that was even more painless because the mole was pretty small, so they basically just numbed the area, and it's numb immediately, and then they scraped it off, so they didn't have to do stitches or anything, and then you just put a Band-Aid over it. I've only had that for like 3 or 4 days though, so I'm still waiting for that one to heal up. But it doesn't hurt at all unless I accidentally tore at the Band-Aid. That hurt, but that one's totally fine. I guess if you want to know about mole removal, that's the short version of that, is if it's small, they'll just scrape it off. They're going to call me like 2 weeks and tell me if it's anything weird. I went home and I just got to put Vaseline and a Band-Aid over it, just change it once a day. Super easy. So there's a little bonus if you get a mole removed. I don't know what it's like if you have if it's a big mole and you have to get a suture. I haven't had to do that. I know Jake has, but I don't remember. I was here, but I don't remember what he had to do for that. I think he just had to keep, they had the little strips, like I just had it with my arm. They had the little strips they put around it, and then you just have to leave it until they fall off, and that's all you do. At least for Jake's. Anyway, so that's my little medical talk, just because it's a thing that happened recently. So if you're worried about it, I would say it'll be okay. I've had Nexplanon twice, and it's been totally fine. It's super effective. So I didn't, my experience, and this varies per person, I did not have a period for a full year when I first got my Nexplanon, and then the next 2 years it was spotting hit or miss. I never had a full period for the 2 years, but it was kind of just okay, this is happening today, kind of thing for 2 days, and then it was gone. So that's my personal experience. I know some people they're still regular. I know some people say they don't get periods the whole time. Some people have it like me, where it's sort of random, and then they hate it and they switch to something else, which is also fair. So just see how it affects you, and if you like it, and if you don't, you can get it taken out. It's the procedure I said, where they just do the little incision and they slowly pull it out, and you don't have to look if you don't want to look, or if you're curious, you can. I guess the doctor won't care, and then you just won't get one reinserted, basically. It's the same procedure I had. You just don't get a new one in. So it's a little gross, a little more invasive. I don't think with any of the other things you see any blood besides this one. At least not that I'm aware of. I don't claim to know every birth control known to man. I think that's everything. If I've missed anything, if you have any questions, ask me in the comments. Apologies, this was TMI. I wish I had heard more people talking about it instead of immediately clicking on a medical video. So if this helps anybody, that's why I wanted to get it out there. But I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!